The Young and the Restless spoilers. Next 2 weeks. Spoilers. May 19th to May 30th 2025. As the week of reckoning drew to a close in Genoa City, an electric tension radiated through the corridors of Winters Manor, the glass facade of Hamilton Winters and Associates, and the gleaming lobby of Newman Abbott Investments. Word had spread like wildfire that Amanda Sinclair had returned to town. Not with the coy half-smiles and fervent declarations of love that marked her earlier visits, but with a sharp purpose that set every member of the Winters family on edge. By Wednesday afternoon, Lily Winters, her heart still raw from recent betrayals, arrived at Devon Hamilton's sleek downtown office with her husband Nate Hastings in tow, phones buzzing with Amanda's cryptic summons. Devon's jaw clenched as he peered through the glass walls, his mind racing back to the nights he spent wondering whether Amanda herself might secretly be Aristotle Dumas, the shadowy puppeteer who had upended so many lives. But today would yield none of those tantalizing confirmations, or denials, without first rattling the polished veneer of Winter's composure. They had barely settled into the plush leather chairs of Devon's conference room when the doors swung open and Nate's eyes widened in familiar astonishment. Amanda stood framed in the doorway, her tailored suit a blend of authority and elegance, a single mahogany briefcase in hand. Her smile was warm but guarded, as though she carried a secret too potent to reveal at first glance. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her clear alto echoing softly off the marble floor. "I know this summons was unexpected. But what I have to share is vital, to your family, to your firm, and to the man so many of you have been hunting." Lily exchanged a wary glance with Nate, who folded his arms, fingertips tapping a staccato rhythm against his bicep. Devon inhaled slowly, steeling himself. "Amanda," he said, voice even, "you said you represent Mr. Dumas. We've all received your message. But before we begin, am I correct in understanding that you are not Aristotle Dumas himself?" His words carried the weight of weeks spent chasing shadows, of phone calls that led nowhere, of private investigators who emerged with nothing but rumors and dead ends. Amanda's lips quirked in what might have been a rueful grin. "Devon," she said, tilting her head, "I appreciate the levity, but I'm afraid I'm not Aristotle Dumas. I am, however, his retained counsel. We've met in person on several occasions, always in secure locations. And I can assure you, he is very much a man, not a guise adopted by any of us." She paused, letting the admission settle. Lily's posture slackened minutely, relief warring with lingering suspicion. Nate frowned, glancing at Devon, whose eyes narrowed in thought. Then, Nate interjected, "Why summon us all here at once? What bomb are you about to drop?" His tone held a twinge of accusation. After all, they had spent countless nights in private council, debating whether to expose Dumas's identity to the world, or to pursue him in the courts, or to keep him in the shadows to protect themselves. Now Amanda had them cornered, and none of them relished the role of prey. Amanda set her briefcase on the table with a decisive thud, opening it to reveal several manila folders and a single slim envelope stamped with a golden seal. "I called this meeting," she explained, "because Aristotle Dumas believes it's time you hear directly from the source you trust most, your mother, your brother, your friend, about who he really is, what he intends, and why you have no cause for alarm regarding your family's future." She slid the folders across the table. Nate reached out and opened one, revealing printed correspondence, emails, handwritten notes, travel itineraries, all bearing the unmistakable letterhead of Dumas Enterprises and the signature of Aristotle Dumas himself. "Look," Amanda said, her finger tracing a passage in a letter dated 3 weeks ago, "my admiration for Neil Winters knows no bounds. His tenacity, his integrity, his commitment to community, these are the pillars upon which I wish to build my own legacy. I have no desire to usurp Winters Foundation, to manipulate its board, or to encroach upon the field of public philanthropy. My goal is simply to learn from Neil's example and to explore partnership opportunities that further his mission." She tapped the paper gently. "That, my friends, is Aristotle Dumas speaking, unfiltered, unvarnished, and unequivocal." A hush fell over the room. Lily's breath caught in her throat. Devon's normally composed features flickered with disbelief. Nate straightened, the folder trembling in his hand. Finally, Lily closed her eyes, as though to stave off an onslaught of emotions. Relief, confusion, skepticism. You're saying he has no designs on Winters, she whispered. It was a question that cut through the haze of midnight strategizing and past accusations, reaching into the core of her maternal fear, that a stranger could slip in and steal her family's legacy under the guise of friendship. Amanda's gaze was steady, unyielding. Yes. I'm saying that Aristotle Dumas is exactly who he claims to be. A man who respects Neil Winters, admires his achievements, and seeks no more than a seat at the table of philanthropic partners. Beyond that, he's recruited me to ensure that all interested parties, friends, family, stakeholders, feel heard and understood. So I stand before you, not as a ruse, not as a double agent, but as an advocate for transparency. She closed the folder and slid it back into the briefcase, snapping the latches shut. Devon leaned forward, fingertips steepled beneath his chin. Transparency is admirable, he said, but so is proof. Where is the guarantee that Dumas will honor these words? We've seen letters before, signed declarations that proved as hollow as coastal bleachers in a storm. He met Amanda's eyes, unflinching. Can he provide a legally binding statement? An escrow of funds that confirms he will not launch any takeover? Or am I to trust a reputation I have yet to verify? Amanda's lips curved into a respectful nod. I anticipated your concern, Devon. Enclosed in this envelope, she said, sliding the slim packet across the table, is a draft of the operating agreement for the Aristotle Dumas Charitable Trust, including stringent non-compete clauses, irrevocable gift provisions for the Winters Foundation, and penalties for any breach of contract. It's drawn up by one of the finest corporate attorneys in the country, and Aristotle is prepared to sign and file it tomorrow morning. Until then, you have this in your hands. Review it at your leisure, and know that he will not proceed with any philanthropic or business ventures that overlap with your interests until it is executed. Lily exhaled, a long, tense sigh that seemed to carry the weight of every sleepless night she'd endured. Nate closed the envelope, his expression softening. That's substantial, he admitted. He glanced at Devon, who allowed himself the smallest of nods. The trio had arrived expecting a confrontation, a public spectacle, perhaps even a trap. Instead they found a measure of earnest concession packaged in legal language. Amanda rose, gathering her briefcase once more. I understand this is a lot to absorb, she said, her gaze sweeping their faces. Aristotle asked me to assure you that his respect for Neil is personal, not a calculated maneuver. And that he values the contributions of Lily Winters, the leadership of Devon Hamilton, and the counsel of Nate Hastings. He wants you to judge him not by rumors or half-truths, but by the contracts and the conversations that we can put in place starting today. As she turned toward the door, Lily stood as well, her posture royal despite the tremor in her voice. Thank you, Amanda, she said, choosing her words carefully. We will review this agreement. And we will hold you to every promise it contains. Her voice carried more steel than any rebuke, proof that Winter's blood ran true in her veins. Outside, the late afternoon sun gilded the city skyline, washing the glassy exteriors of office towers in a honeyed glow. The Winters family emerged as one, Lily's arm entwined with Nate's, Devon's hand resting on Lily's shoulder. They looked back once, toward the sleek building where Amanda Sinclair had delivered her unprecedented peace offering. Though the road ahead remained uncertain, filled with contract negotiations, board votes, and the ever-present question of whether Aristotle Dumas would honor his words, they stepped forward together, united in purpose and cautious optimism. In the silent swell of traffic and distant chatter, Genoa City held its breath. Amanda's bombshell had not detonated a war, instead, it had laid bare the possibility of an alliance founded on mutual respect rather than subterfuge. Only time would reveal whether that alliance would endure. But for this moment, at least, the Winters family had reclaimed their agency, armed not just with suspicion but with legal safeguards, and the knowledge that the man called Aristotle Dumas had chosen, at last, to show his hand. Is Aristotle Dumas really Cain Ashby in disguise? The theory gains traction when we piece together the clues that have surfaced in Genoa City's most whispered corridors. For 6 years, Aristotle Dumas has operated under a carefully constructed alias, quietly building an invisible empire of influence while never once stepping into the public eye. He professes a singular admiration for Neil Winters, an almost paternal deference toward Lily and Jill Abbott, and a cautious respect for the Chancellor Winters' legacy. Yet at the same time, no one among the key players truly trusts him. Or the polished attorney Amanda Sinclair, who now parades his assurances before the very families he claims to honor. When you overlay the timeline and the intimate knowledge he displays, only one plausible explanation remains. This mysterious benefactor is none other than Cain Ashby, returned from exile under a new name and a new face. First, consider the 6-year time frame. 6 years ago, Cain Ashby, portrayed by Daniel Goddard, disappeared from Genoa City and from our screens. When the character was last seen departing for an extended assignment at General Hospital. His absence coincides perfectly with the emergence of a shadowy figure named Aristotle Dumas. No other character left young and the restless at that moment with the same relational ties to Neil, Lily, Jill, and the Chancellor Winters dynasty. By claiming that Aristotle Dumas has existed exclusively for 6 years, the writers, and the character himself, are waving a neon sign directly at Cain's exit date. Next, examine Dumas's peculiar focus on Neil Winters. He speaks of Neil not merely as a philanthropic leader to be emulated, but as a man whose integrity and creative spirit are personal lodestars. Where would such admiration originate? Who among Genoa City's missing or presumed gone could reappear with such unwavering fealty? Only someone who knew Neil in his formative years, someone like Cain, who worked alongside Devon in wine country before his departure. Then there is Lily and Jill. Aristotle Dumas demonstrates an uncanny, almost familial understanding of their pain, their triumphs, and even the minutiae of their professional worlds. He knows Lily's temperament, her unspoken hopes, and her deep-seated need for protection after all she endured. He speaks of Jill's corporate intuition and creative flair with a familiarity that borders on proprietary. Who else could claim such intimate access? Amanda Sinclair may parrot her clients' talking points, but Dumas himself must possess first-hand experience that could only come from years of working closely with these women. Similarly, Chancellor Winters occupies a special place in Dumas's doctrine. He warns Victor Newman's operatives against interfering with the Chancellor name, citing a sense of loyalty that has no rational basis. Unless the man behind the mask once shared battlefields and boardrooms with the very family he now defends. Cain, whose career began in the shadows of Winner Verschneider before transitioning to Newman Enterprises, would certainly carry such loyalties deep in his marrow. What of Amanda's conspicuous role? She arrives in town in response to Dumas's explicit instructions, claiming that a friendly face might calm the suspects. But when Devon Hamilton eyes her with suspicion, she wryly observes that, for Devon at least, her face is far from friendly. That jibe betrays her client's preference for faces he knows well, and for situations he can control. Cain Ashby never trusted Devon with his heart, yet he always respected him as an adversary and occasional ally. Had he truly become Dumas, he would leverage someone like Amanda to gauge reactions, to sow seeds of trust, and then to harvest the information he needed to plan his next move. Crucially, Dumas's background narrative omits any prior identity. He insists that his name is real, that he has stayed out of the spotlight to protect those he admires. But why would he vanish from every public record just as he began amassing power? The logical answer is that Aristotle Dumas is a persona crafted to cloak Cain's return. By adopting a new name and persona, one with classical overtones and scholarly cachet, he can openly champion the institutions he once left behind without drawing connections to his former life. Finally, the practical matter of the actor's availability seals the deal. Daniel Goddard, the original Kane, is currently bound by contract to General Hospital. Were the showrunners to reintroduce Kane in his authentic visage, they could not do so with Goddard under another studio's employ. Hence, we see a different actor, or no actor at all, as Dumas remains a voice on the phone and a signature on documents. This maneuver allows the storyline to unfold without entanglements in real-world contracts, while still evoking Kane's legacy through strategic clues. In Genoa City's grand chessboard of intrigue, Kane Ashby has always been a master tactician. Disappearing at the height of his influence, only to re-emerge when the Abbott, Winters, and Chancellor dynasties stand on shaky ground, that is the mark of a player intent on rewriting the rules. By assuming the mantle of Aristotle Dumas, he obtains the perfect vantage, unseen yet omnipresent, championing the very people he once left behind, guiding their destinies while protecting his own secrets. So what happens next? If Dumas is indeed Kane, he will soon orchestrate a reveal that catches every stakeholder off guard. The Winters family, already armed with legal safeguards and non-compete clauses, will have to confront the man who has stood in their shadows for years. The Abbotts, who once embraced Kyle as the sole heir, will be forced to reconcile the existence of a long-lost brother who bears the visage and the very soul of their former confidant. And viewers, having compiled these clues in their own living rooms, will brace for the moment when Aristotle Dumas drops the facade, removes his mask, and declares, "I am Kane Ashby, and I have returned to claim my place." In the end, this is more than a soap opera twist, it is a testament to Genoa City's enduring fascination with identity, loyalty, and the lengths to which one man will go to protect both his legacy and his secrets. If Kane Ashby truly stands behind the name Aristotle Dumas, then every letter he signs, every phone call he makes, and every promise he extends carries with it the weight of his former life and the promise of a new chapter, one where he can guide his friends and family from the shadows, unburdened by the past he left behind. And when the truth finally emerges, it will reshape every relationship in Genoa City, reminding us all that in a world of shifting alliances, the most powerful disguise is often the one closest to home. As the weekend sun dipped low over Genoa City, casting long amber fingers across the manicured lawns of Newman Ranch, Nick Newman found himself pacing the length of his parents' sprawling veranda, phone pressed to his ear, offering gentle words of reassurance. "Phyllis," he murmured, voice soft enough that only the rustling of the grapevines and the distant call of songbirds bore witness, "I'm here for you. Always." Earlier that afternoon, he'd encountered her on the steps of Crimson Lights, shoulders hunched beneath the weight of some unseen burden, eyes rimmed red with tears. Without a second thought, he'd enveloped her in a comforting embrace, whispering promises of support and loyalty. In that moment, all the hurt in history between them. Years of romantic fireworks, betrayals, and breakups had fallen away, replaced by the simple truth that when Phyllis Summers was in pain, Nick would step forward, no questions asked. Yet before Nick could fully center himself in that serene act of empathy, another presence intruded upon the scene, Sharon Newman. Emerging from the cafe's side door, coffee cup in hand, Sharon's arrival sent a ripple of tension through the late afternoon hush. She paused at the threshold, brow creased, gaze flitting between Nick's outstretched arms and Phyllis's trembling form. For a moment, none of them spoke. Phyllis drew back, brushing a hand across her sleeve as though to shake off every memory she and Nick had accumulated over the years. Sharon's lips curved into a taut, polite smile, one that struggled to disguise the slight flicker of something darker, envy, perhaps, or pain. Nick lowered his voice, stepping between the two women with the practiced ease of a peacekeeper. "Sharon," he said quietly, but words failed him. Because in that taut instant, every unspoken history crowded the air, Sharon's uneasy feelings when Phyllis first re-entered Nick's life, the memory of shared confidences and late-night counsel they had once exchanged, now fractured by the simple fact that Phyllis needed Nick's comfort more than Sharon did. Sharon shifted, cup trembling in her hands, and crossed her arms in a protective gesture that spoke louder than any retort she might have offered. "I came by to see how you were doing, Nick," she began, voice measured. "I heard you were helping Phyllis." She trailed off, as though suddenly uncertain of her own motives. Phyllis, her shoulders straightening with the fierce pride she'd cultivated through decades of reinvention, exhaled slowly. I appreciate it, Sharon, she said, tone cool but not unkind. But right now, I need my brother. Her use of the term my brother hung in the air like a bell toll, a reminder that family bonds could be as sharp as they were comforting. Sharon's gaze flickered, wounded for an instant, before she nodded stiffly. Of course, she said, stepping back. I'll leave you two to talk, then. With that, she retreated, the rhythmic click of her heels fading into the afternoon soundtrack. Once Sharon had gone, the three of them, Nick, Phyllis, and Nate Hastings, who had arrived shortly earlier and watched the exchange with mounting concern, gathered beneath the pergola draped in wisteria blooms. Nate placed a hand on Nick's shoulder. Everything okay? He asked quietly, eyebrows knit with worry. Nick forced a reassuring smile. Yeah, he replied, glancing at Phyllis, who seemed to shrink and expand in the same breath as she weighed whether to remain vulnerable or retreat behind her trademark armor. I just wanted to make sure she's all right. She's been through so much lately.